love for you guys all just to talk about from the early days of looking at script and understanding what your director, Antoine, who you've all worked with numerous times, have a long history. But maybe let's start with you, Heather.
Sure.
What could you tell from this film? What was going to be different about it, and what were some of the obvious challenges, even from the early days of production?
Yes. So this film, for me, the minute that I read this script, I knew that it was going to be the most important film of my career. Prior to this, I worked on a bunch of really fun comedies and some sweet romance dramas. And this film felt so important because of the message and also the times that we were in America. It just felt like it was important to get this message out about the dangers of hate and division and what it can lead to if we're not careful, how we can rewrite history in a horrible way. And so I knew that this was important because of the message behind it. And while it was going to be something that would be entertaining in a way, most importantly, it would be thought-provoking and inspiring, and hopefully it would help people to consider different perspectives and open up their minds.
Yes, I think making any film is complicated and a huge challenge, and this one is no exception. I think you guys were up against incredible weather conditions. I'd love maybe Ed, if you could talk about being on set. The post team has the luxury of air conditioning and controlling of temperature, whereas that was not the case on the day of.
I had plenty of air conditioning every night for about 8 hours, maybe 6. Louisiana in the summer, I don't know if you've ever been, nice place to visit. Keep going. Hot, 100 degrees regularly, 100 plus. Humidity well into the 90%. Storms spend all morning and half the afternoon picking up and then boom, dumping on you. Every afternoon, like clockwork. Thunder, lightning. We took required heat breaks. People measuring heat index and telling you you've got to take 10 minutes, you've got to take 15, you've got to get out of the sun. People, really suffering under really difficult conditions. Let it be said that no matter how difficult these conditions were and how much we felt really put upon, think of the story. Think of the people in the story, and you realize your situation's not that bad.
Something I want to talk about is the opening, establishing tone, establishing environment. Maybe with Marcelo, if you could talk about that first cue. The opening shot coming down into the cotton field, and the first thing we start to hear is the workers, and obviously this first cue that you introduce. Talk about the tone and the choice of instrumentation that you have.
Antoine wanted the score to reflect the spirituality of Peter. That was very important, but also the environment that he's in and this dual spirituality that is both of his African origins and also his Christian faith. And the music had to kind of do both things. And I think in that opening, we were trying to establish the sound of the mystery of the forest. There's a sense that Peter kind of communicates with the forest, and the forest kind of helps him. He has kind of a very special connection with nature. And I used a lot of the berimbau, which is a Brazilian instrument. It's the first instrument you hear. It sounds like a guitar, and it's a fighting instrument from Africa that is associated with the capoeira fight. And I remember when I played this for Antoine originally, he didn't know what it was, and I didn't want to say what it was, and I just wanted to see if the sound would do it, and it really did. Him and Conrad were both very taken with the sound, and then the voices were very important as well. Both the solo, sort of like this African singer, we had this wonderful Joe Virgil, incredible soloist who sings a lot of in a lot of the movie, but also a classical choir, and always having this, again, the dichotomy of his ancestor spirituality and the Christian, and also in some ways the Christian, the way I saw it, was both a relief and a source of inspiration for him to get back to his family. But at certain points, the music kind of shows a little bit of the oppression as well of European culture and all of the things that it was sort of enforcing on that horrible situation. Yeah.
I'd love for Mandell and David talk about the work camp, because once we get there, we're in the middle. We're taking the perspective of this very harsh, very dangerous scenario. There's bombs going off in the background. There's hammers hammering railroad tracks. It's not a quiet, peaceful situation. You guys carry that tension, especially for a very long time. It's a long sequence. And can you guys talk about building, introducing dynamics in your track and introducing the environment, because there's subtleties and nuances that I feel like, especially in here, like you hear everything. You can't escape it.
Yeah, well, when we first saw the images of the labor camp, we knew that it was going to be a large undertaking. There wasn't a lot of production sound of the environment to be had, with Ed capturing the dialogue really well, but just not, we didn't have a lot of the movement, so that all had to be filled in. And with such a wide image and so much happening in there, we knew it was going to be a lot of work to sort of address all the detail. And so, but we had a lot to work with, and all the conditions that Ed had mentioned on set. Antoine wanted us to bring that to the labor camp. He wanted it to be hot and exhausting, not just for the forced laborers, but also for their the slave masters as well. It was just a miserable experience for everybody there. It was hot. People were just labor. The bombs going off in the background implied, that they're continuing to work even beyond the scope of the vision. They're being pressured to get that railroad done in time, because the weapons are coming to reinforce the war effort.
In addition to that, Antoine really wanted the sound to ground the film in this gritty, unrelenting reality. And so we also tried to add voices to it, and we quickly learned that too many voices made it too familiar. And so we started removing voices, and we still had the work and the labor efforts, and the occasional slave master kind of exerting their force, but it became much more tense and unsafe and dangerous by removing the human voice.
Ed, something that had come up was the introduction of the preacher character. It's a quick moment in the beginning, but then it was something that had come up that you saw an opportunity to kind of accentuate, right, later on, or to capture those tracks.
The actor Clyde Jones, right? Really good choice. I'm gonna give you credit just because I can. So Clyde was hired to be the preacher, and he appeared really only one day. He was scheduled as a one-day actor, and he added such a spark to the ensemble that was in the work camp that they extended his contract, and they gave him, they put him in more shots, and I'd look in my monitor and I go, oh, he's in the middle ground. Oh wait, now he's in the background. Oh, he's over here. But they didn't give him anything to say, and I realized that element of what he's all about is missing. So I kidnapped him. I saw that he had earmarked and bookmarked in his prop Bible a whole range of biblical passages, and so I put him into a 4x4 off-road vehicle. Went about a mile away from the set and generators and noise and the shooting crew and all this. I said, read everything you got, everything that you think is meaningful, and he did. And he bellowed it out as if he was in the work camp, and we recorded not only that day but the next morning at breakfast. He said, "Hey, I got some more." And I'm like, "It's 4:30 in the morning. Okay, we'll get it." So we got him a second time, and I know Conrad, the editor, was quite pleased to have all this material as Wild Track, and you guys used some of it, I guess.
Oh, he used quite a bit, and ultimately it became an important addition that he was, in his own way, trying to make it more palatable for the slaves, that this is God's doing, this is God's work, this is a noble thing to serve their masters. And so at some point we couldn't feature it. It wasn't to be focused on, but it was always going to be on the wind. And it was put in several times at various levels. He's way out there or he's just around the corner, but he was still there. And it was kind of an effective tool to say that not only were there whips that would keep the slaves down, but it was also this sort of psychological manipulation. And so that was good stuff.
That's a
Very effective.
Yeah, there's so much to talk about in this film. There's so much thought and detail, and I think for audiences to continue to talk about the importance of this message, I think is crucial. And obviously, it's I think listening to Antoine talk about his film, why he made it, why it's important to make films that continue back to this topic. I'd love for Heather to close out. For you, what was your takeaway of the subject matter of working with Antoine and just reflecting on the project?
Yes, for me, what was most important was that stories like this continue to be told, especially in a time in which you see school systems trying to remove the accurate, portrayal of history from textbooks and the curriculum in general, with critical race theory discussions going on. And that's dangerous because children like my own who are born, in recent years, they may think that American history is having a black president and Barack Obama, but that was quite an achievement that took several hundreds of years to accomplish. And they need to know the truth of American history. For African American children, they need to know how strong their ancestors are. And what I love about this film is that you see a black man saving himself, saving his family. You see him as a hero. You see him as a survivor. And that, to me, gave me great inspiration once I read the script and when I was on set. That was the importance of making this movie. And working with Antoine and Will, what I loved was that they decided early on that we were going to focus on the faith of Peter. That was a decision that they made after the script was done, when they sat down and they had conversations about how did this man continue to fight? How did he continue his struggle through the swamps with all these people chasing him and trying to survive the environments? It had to be his faith in God, if anything else, and his love for his family. And so even though you see the brutality of slavery, there's also this really important message about faith and your love for family and how that can help you endure anything.
That's so well put. Thank you guys so much for coming out tonight. I really appreciate your time. Thank you all for coming out. And
Thank you.
yeah, tell your friends. It's on Apple TV. Thank you.